for further policy planning. So these are all research that can be incorporated into a practice. It is just not choosing the best or evidence-based interventions for our clients. There are so many things that can be research-based or evidence-based. The third question that arises is there a need for more research in my clinical area? Which clinical questions need to be answered? We all know that even when we see patients, or right from or when we deal with certain conditions at society level or at community level, there are so many questions that arise in our mind, and we know that there is a lacune which exists over here for the research, and this is the probable, or this is the scope where we can work on to create answers to these questions. So these are reflections for all of us. We should ask these questions every day to ourselves so that we can contribute more and more to the field and making it an independent and autonomous profession, which is the need of the hour. So how do we do it? If at all I want to involve research in my clinical practice, or you want to do it, how do we do it? So every physiotherapy has a responsibility to keep updated on research findings, right? So we should see, there are now in this era of social media and internet, we have we should be thankful. We have so much of information that is available at our doorsteps, and we just have to just click one thing and we get all the information that we have. But that information also has to be analyzed in a proper manner. Every information that comes to you might not be correct. So even that is an art, right? So that will only come when you read more and more, when you keep yourself updated with the recent trends. How to go ahead even, or how to interpret the information that will come later in my slide, in my presentation. Every therapist should be aware of importance of research for development of profession and clinical practice. I told you that we are an autonomous profession, we are an independent profession, and but we are still striving and struggling to sustain ourselves. We are not as established as other professions. So naturally, when you want to sustain yourself as the profession, as independent profession, research, you have to produce lot of good amount of research to sustain our role in rehabilitation or in every aspect of healthcare. You should implement research findings whenever possible and contribute to expansion of physiotherapy horizons. Can generate new ideas from clinical practice and observations, which would transform into new knowledge and would become evidence-based practice. So whatever evidence you might have studied or you might have seen for the clinical area that you are working on, it might not be done in the same clinical setting that you are working on. So what you can do is you can generate new ideas according to the setup of the clinic and generate new knowledge and ultimately contribute to evidence-based practice. Research, what is research? So research is any systematic search of knowledge which generates new knowledge that might be transferred into practice. As I mentioned earlier, any research is useless if it is not transferred to practice. So this is very, very important that it is transferred into practice. The generalizability of your research findings is very, very important. So it is any systematic search of knowledge that generates new knowledge which might be transferred into practice. Scientific research relies on the application of scientific methods and therefore requires education and training. So we even have certain experts that are properly trained in research. They guide. So they are basically available in academic institutes. So one can also pursue research as a career. So that opportunities are also opening up. Research undertaken by physiotherapists should comply with the ethical and governance requirements of the country. This is very, very important. See, you have the Declaration of Helsinki. I'm sure you might be aware of this term. The Declaration of Helsinki is basically a set of ethical principles which have to be followed when any human experimentation is done. Okay, and this is basically given by World Medical Association, and it applies to all the countries wherever human experimentation takes place. So first and foremost, we should comply with all the ethical and governance requirements of the country to which we belong to. Okay, now coming on to World Physiotherapy Policy Statements on Research and Evidence-Based Practice. So first of all, what is evidence? So evidence is scientific knowledge which is integrated with clinical experience and patient opinion, taking into consideration beliefs and cultural context of the local environment. Right? So as I told you, that evidence might suggest that this is the best treatment for any particular condition, but you might not be able to integrate it into your clinical practice because of various factors that influence your practice. It can be the cultural factors, it can be the beliefs of the patient, it can be the economic condition, the cost factors, and simply it can be patient opinion, because you have we also encounter now patients who are much educated than before. So it can be just patient opinion, they don't want certain treatment, right? And there are certain cultural contexts and beliefs and the local environment that stops us from giving or prevents us from giving certain treatment, even though they might be having full evidence support. So you have to change your practice according to the setting that you're working on. The document states that physiotherapists shall advance the science of physiotherapy by conducting research activities or by assisting those engaged in research. Either you conduct the research activities yourself, or at least you can assist those who are engaged in research. So that becomes our moral responsibility towards the profession for its betterment. The physiotherapist should recognize research as an integral part in continuing growth and development of the profession. So that means simply you should practice evidence-based practice or evidence-based physiotherapy. The policy emphasizes that the physiotherapist conducting a research project has sufficient knowledge of research principles and methodology and adheres to international standards for performing research on human subjects. So this is very, very necessary, because uh, uh, most of the times that what problems we encounter in research, in Indian research, since we're talking in Indian practice, is that they term our research as low quality research, because most of the times we do not adhere to international standards or international this thing principles and of methodology. We do not adhere strictly to them, so there are always flaws on conducting our research. So we should always follow that. So now there are various standards that have been set. For example, if you are conducting a randomized control trial, you have consult guidelines, right? They give you stepwise guidelines, stepwise clear instructions on how to go about a randomized control trial. Similarly, if you have your observational studies, you have stroke guidelines which are there, right? So there are various guidelines that have been developed internationally, and we need to adhere to them strictly in order to produce a good quality research. The World Physiotherapy Policy Statement on Evidence-Based Practice states that physiotherapists have a responsibility to use evidence to practice and to ensure that the management of patients is based on the best available evidence. In addition, this is very important, the last point, the physiotherapists have a responsibility to avoid the use of methodologies, techniques, and technologies that have been shown to be ineffective or unsafe. See, this we encounter daily in our routine, especially in Indian clinical practice, that there are various modalities, there are various treatment techniques that have turned obsolete in the world, in other countries, but we still use them. I don't know why. They are dear to us, especially the electrotherapy modalities which have turned obsolete outside. We still use them in Indian clinical practice. So there are various factors I think might be affecting it, but then it becomes a responsibility to avoid the use of such techniques which have been shown to be ineffective completely, or they have been termed unsafe. Okay, and then embrace the new techniques or the new methodologies that have been developed for that condition. Health policies and Indian frameworks in relation to physiotherapy research priorities. Who has identified worldwide health problems related to lifestyle and or lack of physical activity, that is the non-communicable diseases, are global research priorities. See, the need of the hour today, what is bothering us are the lifestyle disorders, right? The lifestyle disorders, the stress related disorders, the food habits, they all are leading to non-communicable diseases, that is the obesity, diabetes, hypertension. So we play a very important role in such lifestyle disorders, and who has identified that as a global research priority, right? The demand for evidence-based practice includes the cost-effective intervention and the changing view of health, disease, and impairment of function. Right? So evidence, economy has to be taken into, cost effectiveness has to be taken into consideration in Indian physiotherapy practice. So you have to uh, take into consideration the cost effectiveness and the changing demand for the for health, for the promotion of health, disease, and impairment of function. Right? So what this will lead to? This will lead to interventions that will maintain health. They will treat them, rehabilitate it, rehabilitate the patients with impairment, activity limitations, or participation restrictions. Right? We basically work in these three areas. Right? We work with impairment, activity limitations, and participation restrictions. That has to be with respect to gender, ethnicity, and further innovation. Physiotherapists also have a role to play in a broader public health agenda and within occupational health, right? So whenever any broader public health agendas are planned, that we should, that even the government policies are there, or there are certain institutes that are working towards preventive health, then physiotherapists should definitely have a major role, or they should form a part of core team in this public health agenda. Okay, in the preventive and promotive health aspects, and even in the occupational health. Right? Prevention in occupational health. Health enhancing physical activity is an area where physiotherapists are well equipped to engage in interventions, policy planning, and research. Right? So according to the lifestyle disorders, the policies are, or any other condition, the policies are planned at the national level. Right? So we should not only be engaged at the root level, that is at the intervention level, but also even the at the central level or at the national level for policy planning and research. We keep the workforce healthy, and we get people getting back to work as early as possible. Now this basically reduces the economic burden on the nation and on the society. Right? So we reduce both healthcare cost and economic burden of the society. So we basically work towards developing overall quality of health, policy planning, and interventions for promoting health. Intervention should be planned at population level or for clinical cohorts. That's what I was talking about. That research should be conducted at a generalized level, at population level, so that the it can be applied to a larger amount of people, larger population. Right? Clinical cohorts, you can identify the people with a definite condition or similar attributes, and then work towards a proper guideline formation. The research on promotive and preventive physical activity involves a wide range of methods. Right? So we basically have a very good knowledge about human movement, physical activity, and exercise prescription. So we should apply that specific knowledge and form the guidelines for preventive and promotive health. Right? So this prevention and promotion, it basically includes collaboration with other professions. Like for example, if we are planning any rehabilitation protocol for diabetes, then we have the medical professionals can be included in that, the physiotherapists can be included in that, the lab technicians can be included. So it basically is a collaboration of various professions, and a very good work or good research work can come out from this. We can work in areas of disability, like if you're working for disabled children, then the physiotherapists, the occupational therapists, the teachers of the disabled school, the social workers, so many people can collaborate, and you can plan a very good intervention or plan a very good setup for disability and rehabilitation, and ultimately we can take part, or we can contribute to human resource planning. Now, what is the scope of research in physiotherapy? How do you know what is the scope? So then the highest priority is basically to address the following questions. When health problems are developing, at what point is physiotherapy most or least effective for improving patient results? Right? So there are certain conditions in which when physiotherapy is introduced earlier, the impairment or the lack of function is less. Right? So then we have to decide whether physiotherapy is introduced later, or if it is introduced early, it creates benefits for the patient or no. right? So when health problems are developing, at what point is physiotherapy most or least effective for improving patient results compared to no physiotherapy? So does introducing physiotherapy rehabilitate the patient better? Does it improve the quality of life better? What factors affect this, right? What methods are effective to help patient make health changes, or which treatments are effective? This is definitely a domain. In addition to clinical effectiveness, or in addition to introducing physiotherapy at a point of rehabilitation, the other services are how services are delivered. This is a very important lacunae which is there, that how many days of interventions are effective, that is 7-day services, 10-day, 12 sessions. There are certain protocols that are developed for certain conditions, but every condition does not have a definite treatment duration which is available. Then cost effectiveness and value of physiotherapy, right? So rehabilitation, taking into consideration the cost effectiveness, which is very, very important for any clinical setting. Public health, including physical activity and behavior change. Once you have introduced that preventive aspect, how does it change the behavior or attitude of the public towards physical activity? The facilitation of return to work, how is it done exactly, right from rehabilitating to vocation, everything, how is it carried out? And the outcome measurements, the outcome measurements are also very, very important. See, we assess any intervention in terms of outcome, right? Or we assess any quality in terms of outcome. So that outcome, whatever you take in your research, they also have to be standardized. They have to be valid and reliable. So even that studies also forms a research. Like if you validate or you see reliability of certain tool or any outcome measure, then that also becomes a research. So what is the progress of research in physiotherapy, so on? The early scientific publications related to physiotherapy emerged in the first part of 20th century, and the first scientific randomized control trial was reported in the year 1929. Okay, physiotherapy research has grown exponentially over the last 4 decades. That is, the number of RCT studies have grown exponentially. I will be depicting that in a figure which is taken from Pedro. Systematic reviews and evidence-based clinical practice guidelines of relevance to physiotherapy have rapidly increased since 1990s. The systematic reviews and evidence-based clinical practice. Meta-analysis, what is meta-analysis? Basically summarizes, it is a systematic method to summarize and evaluate treatment effects across many studies. Many studies are evaluated and ultimately the evidence is given or the conclusion is given. So now, how do we do all this for systematic reviews, meta-analysis? How do we retrieve the data? So 4 comprehensive databases have been identified. Right, I'm sure the PGs might be knowing it, but I even hope that the UGs even start start accessing this databases. So they are basically Central, Pedro, PubMed, and Embase. These are the 4 comprehensive databases that have been identified, and the reports or the researches that are reported or they're included in these databases should be considered as authentic. So this is the progress. This is the figure I was talking about, that we have progressed so much. The number of trials have increased from 1982 to 2017. There has been an exponential increase in the number of RCTs. So we are definitely progressing in our field. There's also an ongoing discussion on how and by which means individuals interpret the results presented in systematic reviews and implement them into practice. So this is what I was talking about, that every review or every RCT, though RCT are the highest level of evidence, when you read them, you should even know how to interpret them into clinical. So basically, they might give you the conclusion that this treatment is effective as compared to this, but there are always the limitations that are mentioned in the articles if you have seen. So you should analyze or you should review these findings very thoroughly before implementing any evidence into your practice, right? So it might be true for their clinical settings, but it might not be that effective for your clinical setting. So that interpretation of systematic reviews and RCTs is also very, very important. So RCTs, not only RCTs, we have other various types of studies that are cross-sectional studies, longitudinal studies, right? Systematic and meta-analysis we already covered. There are other quantitative and qualitative studies that are undertaken, right? So there are various types of other studies too. There are to date more than 7,526 reviews and 637 guidelines posted on Pedro. So we know that we are moving ahead in research in our field. Now, how do we disseminate and implement that research knowledge? It is very, very important. So how do we disseminate it? There has to be a media, there has to be a medium through which we can disseminate it. So it is a challenge and a continuing process to implement research or evidence into daily practice. There is no single factor. You just have to implement many strategies in order to bring about that change in clinical practice. So it is just not one day process or 1 month process. It is a continuous process that has to continue. It has multiple practice changes that would be needed in order to form evidence-based practice. The necessity for all physiotherapists to be critical consumer of research is recognized. So one way is that the conferences, we attend conferences where the people, they come and present their research. So that is a very good way of disseminating your knowledge, research knowledge. At the end, you basically even have the state of art knowledge, that is up to date knowledge is provided at the end of every presentation, and you always have some clinical take home messages, right? So conferences play a role. Even the social media, it also plays a good amount of role in disseminating the research findings. Now, talking about research methodology and study designs, I told you that any research methodology has to meet international standards for us to stand there. So, while RCTs are still considered a higher standard for evidence of efficacy of treatments, it is important to promote a wide range of research studies and methodologies, both qualitative and quantitative, in order to achieve evidence-based practice. The clinical case studies, right? Clinical case studies are various types of studies that target individualized and tailored. Clinical case studies are equally important as RCTs because they are done in local setting. They're tailored according to the needs of the patient, of the clients. So they basically contribute a lot to evidence-based practice, and you come to know under local circumstances how an individual treatment or tailored treatment works. So clinical case studies are equally important. Thus, very useful information for evidence-based practice may be provided by observational studies and descriptive studies. We basically study the attributes of a population and we come to know what is the prevalence of this, or what is the attitude of the clients or of the subjects towards any particular phenomena. So they are also very common in physiotherapy. There is need for more meta-analysis and systematic reviews in physiotherapy regarding specific and sensitive outcome measures customized for different conditions. That is what I talked about in my previous slides, that the outcome measures that are there, they also have to be, the validity and reliability have to be established so that they can be used in clinical trials. Evaluation of measurement properties of various outcome measures, including how they are used and interpreted in specific patient groups. Okay, the importance of clinical research. Definitely, I've been talking throughout about the importance of research. So there is a strong positive trend of conducting high quality research in physiotherapy worldwide, and there's a substantial body of evidence even which is produced. So that we have seen in the progress of our profession, that how many RCTs are produced and meta-analysis and systematic reviews have been produced. But still there remains a scope for improvement in the quality of the conduct and the reporting of clinical trials. So that is why I told you that in clinical trials, we basically have to follow the concert guidelines strictly. They have to be conducted according to the guidelines and even reported according to that, in order to promote the continuous development of evidence that can be applied in clinical practice. Those who are not aware about the concert guidelines, you can Google it. It is available online, and you will get an entire methodology, research methodology, and very detailed steps on how to conduct a clinical trial. Now, one important medium that helps in dissemination of the research knowledge are journals, the scientific journals, because they publish the articles. So disseminating research is of course essential. There is an ever growing number of scientific journals that publish research relevant to physiotherapy, but I would suggest follow the World Physiotherapy List journals and follow those researches, and with different quality indicators. Okay, now which are the important quality indicators? You can go through the impact factor of the journal, the Web of Science indexing, the frida ranking of journal level, or Norwegian system for ranking. So these are all different quality indicators. You should go through them. You can search the journal on these quality indicators, and if it seems that it is a good journal, and then you can go through the researches that have been published in that journal, right? So because there are a lot of predatory journals that exist, and such publications are of no use because they do not follow the guidelines of international standards, and such research never contributes to the upliftment of the profession. So open access is an important principle where there should be no fees for the user to be able to download articles, though the authors have to pay a publication fee. And they should always, you should, whenever you interpret any research findings, at the end of the article you always have conflict of interest. So that you should always see, because conflict of interest, they basically influence the research, right? So if there are any conflicting in financial interest of the publisher or even of any other source of funding, you should always see before interpreting the results. If they are there, then interpret the results with caution. Sherpa Romeo is an online resource that aggregates and analyzes publisher open access policies from around the world, and it provides summaries of self-archiving permissions and conditions of rights given to authors on a journal by journal basis. Okay, so open access policies are basically analyzed by this resource. For dissemination of research, social media can nowadays be used to communicate information about ongoing research or research results. It is a very good platform to disseminate research. Now, we have been talking about promotion, how to go about it and what to do and all, but there are always certain barriers to a process. So what are the barriers to evidence-based practice, especially in India? The first is lack of research skills. We do not have thorough professionals or thorough research professionals that can conduct research in a systematic manner. Lack of understanding of statistical analysis and methods, right? We basically rely on the statisticians which are very scarce and which are not available. So that there is always a lack of understanding of statistical analysis. Inability to apply findings to individual patients having unique characteristics. So that is, I was interpreting the research. You can read a lot of research, but interpreting it and applying to individual patients needs understanding. Insufficient time. Lack of funding is a grave issue in India. Though we have the funding agencies for medical research and paramedical research, we have ICMR funding our research, we have Gujcost, we have the Department of Science and Technology, and there are various other institutional level funding that is available. But still, funding remains a question, or it remains a grave issue in India. There is less amount of funding available for research. So lack of understanding of English in which articles are written, this again is a very important issue. Language barrier. If you do not understand it correctly, you might not be able to interpret it. So language becomes a barrier at times. Lack of generalizability of literature findings to patient population. That's what I was talking about, that the research might have been carried out in across the globe, across other part of the globe, but it might not be applicable or generalized. You cannot generalize it to Indian population. So then you have to tailor, make the findings and apply it to the population. Now, barriers, if at all we overcome, then what are the recommendations for actions to promote research? So this I would like to tell everyone, to the listeners, that there is a World Physiotherapy website which is dedicated to evidence-based practice. Okay, that is www.wcpt.org/EBP. It can be accessed. Okay, you get evidence-based practice for lot of conditions. This includes a section on databases, journals, EBP learning sources, guidelines, research methodology, and ethics. The use of such databases like Pedro, Cochrane, Allied Health Evidence, and others should be encouraged. You should regularly access these databases and to follow established clinical international guidelines and participate in building new ones, right? So you should always follow clinical international guidelines, but also even participate in building new ones. You promote networks for physiotherapy research. Like I told you that a lot of collaboration can take place, interdisciplinary as well as intradisciplinary collaborations. You should form networks for physiotherapy research. Increase the number of people with research competencies. The professionals should be trained thoroughly in research so that they can carry out quality research. Inter and interdisciplinary cooperation should be encouraged. That is, many physiotherapists can come together, or the medical professionals or the social workers, whatsoever you are trying to find out. The people accordingly can be involved, so that entire network is formed and a comprehensive approach can be designed. Support publications in peer-reviewed journals and those who are indexed in good database. Consider establishing awards and funding to stimulate quality research initiatives in physiotherapy. So many conferences nowadays, they give a best paper presentation or poster presentation, or even the awards for best publication. These are also present in India. So that is a good sign, but it needs to increase more. The funding agencies need to increase more. So this has to be done not only at the individual level, but even the various institutions or academic colleges or institutions can fund the researches as much as possible. So to promote research, encourage the development and use of clinical guidelines and initiatives to conduct systematic reviews of the literature. It is important that professional representatives for physiotherapy take part in the national processes of development of multi-professional clinical guidelines. So this is what I was talking about, that first of all, you want to develop a comprehensive approach to diabetes, and it is developed at a national level. So not only the medical professionals, the lab persons, or the nurses, but even physiotherapists, the representatives of physiotherapy should be present at national level, since we play a very important chunk in rehabilitating those patients, or in preventing diabetes or promoting health in diabetes. I'm just giving one example, citing an example of diabetes. So there are various other areas also where we should be present at that national level policy making team, right? So we can develop a multi-professional clinical guideline, because rehabilitation forms a part in every condition, most of the conditions, and physiotherapy should be a part of that national process and team. Encourage conducting research that is in accordance with ethical and research standards. This I've already talked about before. Establishment of national and international databases by developing professional research registers. See, for clinical trials, we do clinical trial registration. At CTRI, we have that database. So what happens is, we come to know that such national as well as international databases should be available, because it gives you information about what research is going on or what researches have been done. And in case you want to contact any experts regarding any research area, you can go to that databases and contact them at any point of time when you know that they're carrying out research in a particular area. So such databases need to be developed. They're very helpful. You have to encourage collaboration with other stakeholders and organizations on both national and international level for research development and implementation of evidence-based physiotherapy. So I've already talked about the interdisciplinary and intradisciplinary cooperation. The other stakeholders, like if you are developing any new app, then you can take the technological department, the engineers along with you, and other organizations with you that are working in public health sector, and you can contribute towards development of research at national and international level. So concluding it, research in physiotherapy is essential for the legitimacy of the profession. This is very, very important. We are striving to establish ourselves still, even though we are one of the oldest professions. So to legitimize our profession, we need research in order to develop and to remain an independent, autonomous profession which has got its own knowledge base and its own evidences. This will lay the foundation for professional practice. Research should be conducted in close connection with education and clinical practice to ensure development of knowledge in physiotherapy, which will result in the highest quality of healthcare, which has to be our motto and aim at any point of time. Thank you so much. Do you have any questions? If you have any questions, you can come up with it. Any questions from your side? Can you hear me?
Yes. Maybe
If
there is no questions.
there are no questions, then I'll conclude with slide. Be less curious about people and more curious about ideas. So let us not be curious about each other and each other's lives. Let us be more curious about ideas and contribute to the profession more and more. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Shlesha. I handed over to Mihir Thakkar for your lot of thanks.
Yes, thank you, Bobby. Thank you. What an informative session, guys. Good evening, all. Myself, Dr. B. Thacker. I'm truly honored and privileged. Excuse me, can somebody mute himself? There is a background noise. Thank you. I'm truly honored and privileged to propose the vote of thanks on this memorable occasion of the second session of KAA Talk series. On behalf of KAA core team and all the members, I would like to extend my gratitude to Dr. Shlesha Vaidya for sparing time from her busy schedule. I must say, we were literally grabbed throughout by her liveliness and creative presentation. We indeed had great insights about the scope and importance of research in our profession. To mention few of them, the research has to be part of daily practice. The question and re-questioning when you are taught something, the habit of asking why question, that is very important for all the UG students and PG students at this stage. So I'm thankful to her for throwing some light on wise use of electromodalities. And friends, this is the vital issue in current Indian physiotherapy practice, I must say. And also the scope of physiotherapy practice and research in public health and health policies. So very few physios are in this field. So we must think of expanding our scope of practice. Plus, she explained about RCTs, systemic reviews, meta-analysis, case studies, and the importance of authentic scientific research and journals. So the evidence-based practice is the need of the current era of the physiotherapy practice. And as she mentioned, there is a huge need of research in India. So I'm sure many young minds present over here would have decided to flourish in the field of research after this session. I would also like to express my gratitude to our Mandal, that is Charutar Arogya Mandal, to the backbone of KMPIP, our Honorable Principal, Sir Dr. H. Harihara Prakash, core committee members and office bearers of KAA for initiating such event wherein seniors, even after graduating from their alma mater, can contribute in brightening, sharpening, and enhancing the skills of the juniors. Lastly, I would like to thank all the spectators who have been present from various parts of the world, managing varied time zones and their jobs, for being so enthusiastic and eager to learn and also to improve as an individual. Without your immense support and participation, it would have not been successful. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mihir. Our next start talk maybe is in April and or May first week. The date will be announced shortly. And our alumni meet is held in December third week, which will be declared soon. This is our next agenda of KAA. Okay. So thank you so much, everyone.
We'll end the meeting, right, Bhavin?